Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton. This is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. Today, I've got Donna Mazzitelli. Since 2013, she began her own small press to give authors a venue for publishing their books. And so she does all these support works around that. It's called Merry Dissonance Press, M-E-R-R-Y. She's been termed the Word Heartiste. She's this award-winning writing coach, an editor, a publisher. As of 2021, her press has published 21 books and accumulated more than 50 awards. So she continues to work on her own writing, and to date, she's written and published 3 children's books, a personal memoir called Mosaic Heart, Pieces of an Unfinished Life, which will be releasing in early 2022. The reason that she and I actually connected as we began talking was because I am also writing a memoir piece, and I know the intricacies of having the vulnerability to tell your story. But she recognizes that everyone has a story to tell. Of course, you know that. As a listener, you know you have a story that lives in you. And sometimes you grapple with, how much should I share and how much should I keep close to me? And I believe we're living in an era where we need stories, especially the stories of women. So this is an episode on gauging whether it's the right time to write your story. And if it is the right time to write your story, how you get your story out and go deeper into it. And so she's going to give some practical tips on, just ways to anchor yourself into your writing skill set and what she calls allowing yourself to be written. So I hope that you enjoy this episode with Donna Mazzitelli. Donna, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness.
Hi, Cherie. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. Actually, we've met before, but it's nice to really have this one-on-one personal conversation.
We met virtually. I was presenting at a conference and you were there. Yes. And so we virtually know each other.
That's exactly right. And one of the multitude of pages, right, that you had to scroll through to see all the participants.
Yeah. But
Not everybody was showing up.
It's interesting that we're kind of moving into this age now where you can almost feel like you know the person, even if you haven't met in person. I mean, Zoom and all the ways that we're innovating that with COVID, I don't know. I think it's great.
Well, I'm with you. I think so too. Actually, I think it's given me permission in my business for sure to be able to meet with people this way, as opposed to having to drive to meet somebody or to say that if somebody wants a person that they can meet with face to face and they're in another state, then maybe I'm not the right person. So it's like, right. It's opened it up for me.
It saves time. And I think for women, when we have so many demands on our schedules and our energy levels, to be able to, it's a great grand weeding process, but it's also, it can be just as powerful for connection almost as real life. So
much so. Yeah.
So let's dive in. So you work with helping people get their stories out.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love it because I think that our stories are our expertise. Whatever we've lived, whatever our lived experience is in the body. It's there. It's recorded somewhere.
For sure.
And so we get to be the expert of our own lives, our own domain, our own life experiences. I mean, because have you ever been through something where someone's like, oh, I know just how you feel, but they haven't been through it?
Right.
They don't.
Exactly.
Which is how you feel. So I know you've had a series of challenges and traumas and things that have brought you to where you're like, the power of story, and you decided that you wanted to get your story out.
Yes.
And so your book is coming out soon, right?
It's coming out. The goal is that it will be out in February of 2022. So it's been in the making for over 10 years. So it's been a long time coming. So there was a long time of working on it, and then more life happened that needed to be part of the story, which can happen. And
that's
then
happened to me for like 5 years.
There you go. I know. And then there's not just what happens, but then there's the processing of it. Right. And and that introspective, reflective part, that when you're telling your story, it's like you tell it as it happened, but at the same time, you also can bring in that introspective reflection that, I don't know, just makes it so much richer. Yeah.
Like it's almost, you need some space around it and some time around it, and then you kind of integrate it.
Right.
And exactly. It's like putting it in a perspective of like, I'm really glad I passed through that. But when you're telling, I don't know if you journal at all, but I am a huge journaler. Okay, cool.
Me too.
So I can go back and look at some of my old journal entries. I'm like, man, I was in some seriously acute pain and disillusionment or whatever it was. And it's like, so glad that I recorded that.
Exactly.
Because over time, you know, and especially if you haven't really worked in it or worked with it and you just kind of got it all out and then swallowed it down and didn't talk about it again, it's going to come back.
Absolutely. And I see that in my journals too, where I can go back and then realize, oh my gosh, that's so familiar. I mean, I could say it almost exactly the identical to how I said it back then, because it's still like, maybe it's one of those things that's still, yes, it's still one of those things that's a work in progress for sure.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Well, and then like, I don't know about you, but part of me sort of like dragging my feet energetically to get my real story out. Like I could have done versions that were a little more watered down.
Yep.
And I have self-published a book back in 2007, but I didn't dive. It was self-published and I didn't dive deep into how it has affected me, the subject matter, which was depression and my sister's suicide. And now that I've had 14 years and many more life experiences since that book, now I'm coming to this, like, why not lay it all out there?
Right.
Why not talk about the mystical experiences I've had that people might think are weird? Why not talk about my deep trauma? And that was trauma for me that somebody else might be able to relate to. Don't you kind of feel like we're moving into this era of the earth where everyone's sort of integrating their ancestral stuff, what they came into this world with, and then looking back at the series of experiences that they've had and where they were born into and what they were born into, so that we can just like look at it and go, wait a minute, is this how I want things to be? Is this what I want for my family? Is this what I want for myself? So we're kind of like going to this new terrain of everyone kind of being vulnerable or getting the courage to do that.
Exactly. That's true.
So how do you get the courage? What was your process for like, okay, here we go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell it.
So it was interesting because of course, journaling, I was, journaling about what was happening when it was happening. And so, the first happening was that I had breast cancer in 2007. So I did a lot of writing after that and writing about what happened in the process. And then, just what decisions I made and the journey that I went on, because I took 4 months to even decide how I was going to handle it. So it was quite interesting to look at, Western medicine as opposed to, so traditional as opposed to non-traditional and alternative. And so I went on this huge quest. So that's in my story. That's part of it. And, what I came to see. And so I thought that was going to be the book. And I thought that book was about me finding my voice. And because it really did open me up in ways that, that I had shut down. So I thought that was the book, and I thought it was going to be about my childhood and writing about that experience. And then I can't remember what else was. Well, I there's addiction in my lineage. So I thought it was going to be all of it, kind of all rolled into one book. And then that, I was working on that for a period of time and for many years, let's say. And then in 2014, I was diagnosed with a different type of cancer. And so I was diagnosed with anal cancer in 2014. Which had a very different treatment. The treatment for it was I had been able to not have to go through chemo and radiation with my breast cancer. I underwent surgery, and that was the extent of it. But anal cancer, it's just the opposite. Surgery is the last resort. The first line of defense is chemo and radiation. And I was now 8 years older, almost 60 years old. And so between that and the treatment, it was like I had to make quick decisions. So it was a very different process. So it was like part of the growth that I hadn't done with my first cancer. I had this opportunity to come to a really different place in terms of how I saw cancer, how I see cancer, how I saw the treatment, how I saw what options, what's available at the time. And also woven through my story is what happened in my marriage, which it was very interesting that how all of that played out in my marriage, how it had an impact, everything that went on.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening is after 14, I realized that this book has to be about those two experiences and what happened within my marriage and pieces of childhood that relate, but not the way I thought it was going to be. So the book showed me that it had to be way different than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. I'm just going to interject something here.
Yeah.
So 2007 is a 7.
Yes.
7 years later, 2014. Here we are. Correct. 7 years later in 2020. And the only reason I'm saying is because I had the same thing. I had different things happen in 2007, 2014, and now 2021. It's almost like these cycles of creation or it's like a 7 of completion. Oh, you got that. Now here's your next lesson and here's your next one. And I'm like, no, 2022 has to be my year of like, oh, I get it now. I can see it all. But yeah, so that's when my book will come out, is 2022, just like you.
That's awesome. Well, I have goosebumps all the way from feet to top of my head as you were saying all that, because I'm very aware of those 7-year cycles too. And so 2021, there was a piece of like, what is 2021 about, and was it going to be about my health again? But I realized that no, 2021 is about completion of this. It really is. Mm-hmm. And that's completing the book. But of course, and I thought it was going to get published in 2021, but of course, again, the book lets you know. And so it was like, no, it's not time yet. So it'll come out. Both cancer diagnoses happened on Valentine's Day.
Really?
So my book, yeah.
Okay, so now you're giving me chills because things happen for me in 2s and 7s. February, things happen for me in Februaries.
Oh my gosh.
And 2s and I'm not kidding. I'll tell you what it means too. Okay. So 22 is the number of feminine wholeness, and 2 is opposition, but it's also got the dual feminine component. It's the energy. And Mary Magdalene, just so I was talking to you about her earlier. So her feast day is 7/22. And when I did my sacred pilgrimage about Mary Magdalene, there was so much about 22 and so much about 7. And as I look at my life, I can see the pattern now. Like we were saying, looking back, yes, you can see it. But when you're in the middle of it,
right, it's hard. It's really
so hard. I'll just tell you this. My last child was born, the 7th member of our family. She was born 7/7/14. Oh. And I had to wait 7 years because in 2007, I saw the vision of her and her brother. And anyway, but my Magdalene path, my path of feminine empowerment, my awakening, if you will, has followed that same trajectory into 2022.
Wow.
So in February, I'm like, I'm kind of thinking my book will be done in February of 2022. Now, whether or not, maybe I'll wait to publish it until summer, but you never know. So I just wanted to say, like, your 2 and your February is right in line with my 2s.
Isn't that crazy? Wow. So a lot of parallel for sure.
But if I hadn't documented it in my journal, if I hadn't written it when the feeling was like, and I don't know about you, but I literally would hear a voice like, write it down, like, take note of this. It doesn't make any sense right now, but it will. And so it would just like, write. And now I'm like, it's a book. It's a total like book now. Because I can see the arc. I can see the patterns.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say, when I started writing pieces way back, I mean, in 2008, when I started writing, I didn't know for certain that I was going to write a book at that point. I didn't have, I wasn't even working in the book world at that point. So, but I was writing these stories down as I had my journal, but then the stories came to me of how to tell it. So it's different than how I journaled it. And so those started coming out, and I have a leather notebook that I have them in, and it's starting to fall apart at this point, but it's all, I handwrite. I write with a fountain pen when I'm writing pieces. So different than when I'm journaling. So it's like, there's a ritual to it, I even consider that sacred, sacredness to it. And it's a burgundy pen, and it's just
you have your own. Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. So if somebody has a life experience, let's just say. I mean, I recently spent quite a bit of time with someone who has some sexual trauma from her childhood. And we were in England together, actually. And she was like kind of gearing herself up to go, not in the morbid details necessarily, but just like the violation of it and the feelings and the trauma around it and what that little girl believed or thought or locked in those moments. And so it's just kind of like, yeah, I know I need to write about this, but there's a lot of resistance and procrastinating and avoidant behaviors to not, or to just like gear herself up to go in and write it. And I can relate to that too, because there's aspects of my life that I'm just like, oh, please, can we just move on from here? But there's power in diving into that shadow a little bit. Exactly. With presence. So what have you found to be helpful there?
What I tell people is if the idea of writing it as a book feels too big at this point, and that's where the resistance is, that it's about, creating a book. It's like, okay, back off of that. And why not just write what you can write at the times that you're open to writing with no expectation or no like destination. Just start getting it down and write, whether it's, I love handwriting because it's like, for me, it's hand to heart, but not every, but depending on when somebody was born, like handwriting is, or print, is not necessarily the like
arduous
happy place.
Heck, yeah.
So it's easier to compose at the computer. I just find for myself at the computer, I get very cerebral and I'm not in my heart. So it's like I do it by hand first, and then I put it into the computer, which allows me to kind of bring in my own self-editing, but not editing to the point of trying to take the story away. I mean, not trying to hide it, but but usually it's to make sure if there's more to bring in. So I would tell somebody though to just start with whatever, or voice recording, just to start getting it somewhere, getting it down somewhere. And then
and I think part of that, I think part of the resistance is like the vulnerability of like it not being a certain way, because people were going to read it. Yeah. That's why journaling is so powerful, because no one's reading my journal. Exactly. I'm not editing anything, right. It's raw. And
Me neither. Right.
So so I guess let's maybe talk about that resistance to how it will be received. I'm kind of in the middle of that too, because I've got a lot of controversial things that I'm writing about. And I find myself wanting to edit. Like I've got the angel and the devil on my shoulder. Right. And part of me is just like, girl, go. Like, this is why you're on earth. This is what this is your lived experience. And the other part of that is, sorry, my husband is doing something upstairs. I don't know if you can hear that. It's like kids are not even home. They're at school. He's rolling something around up there. So I don't know if it picks up, but so the devil on my shoulder is like, this is not going to go over well. Like, who do you think you are? Like those voices. Oh, yes. Like, you're not a polished writer. This is not complete, etc.
So that happens to everybody. It happens to everybody. And it doesn't just happen. It happens all through the process. I can tell you it's happening for me right now as my book is with the proofreader. I've been through and when it was with the editor and it had been with him and I actually used a him, and it was with him for a while. I started all that negative self-talk going on about, like it must be just awful. He can't even let me know what's happening because it's so bad. We're colleagues. And so it was like, to entrust one of my colleagues with my writing as opposed to my editing, was very, very vulnerable. So, but no matter who you are, it's going to come up. So I do something, if I start with somebody in the beginning of the process as a coach, I do something, I call it the touchstone experience. And we go through a 2-hour process where we really look at the who, what, and why of the book. And then we really get to, I call them those saboteurs. We get to the answers of what we will say when those saboteurs come up. When that saboteur, or whether you call it the devil or whatever, is taunting and saying, who do you think you are to put your story out? What makes you think that you have anything to say? What makes you think that you're a writer? I mean, all those things that go on, you have this piece that you come back to that it says, this is me, and this is why I'm the one to tell the story. And these are the things that I experienced, and this is what I've come to know, and this is why I'm the one to share it. And you come back to that every time that you get to that place of self-doubt.
Just to sort of anchor yourself into why you're doing. Yeah.
Which is why I call it a touchstone, because it's that touchstone piece that you come back to. It's your compass. It's your it's your grounding piece. It's like what you use to just know that you're doing it for a reason. And then the other thing that I really say to everybody, and goes for me as well, is that an editor comes into the process to help us make our book even better, not to change our voice, not to not to change our story, like alter it in some significant way, not to do anything that we don't agree to. So let's put it that way. But it's to help you look at, where did I not tell enough? Where have I maybe kind of bled all over the page, and yet it's like now it's not going anywhere? Where have I kind of gone off, and maybe there's a little sense of resentment or vengeance, or I'm thinking memoir, trying to get back at somebody. So I, as the editor, with my heart and with my intuition and with my gentle, as gentle as I can be, I come in and help you see those places, or where haven't I gone deep enough? Where did I kind of leap over into, let me just show you that I'm the expert. Instead of going into, here's what happened in this moment, and here's how painful it was. And guess what? I just went through this with my editor we went through the developmental edit, then we went through the line edit. And there was this place in my book that he was like, Donna, this is like the moment, with my second experience. This is the moment that was like pivotal. And yet you just kind of went from what was happening to like over here, what you were going to do next. And but he said it in a very gentle way too, very loving way, that it was like, I just really want you to stay with this moment for a moment and just let us be with you here, because this was a point. It was just like such an emotional, place. And I had glossed over it. And he was absolutely right. And I had to sit with it for about 2 days before I could really write it. And then I had to write it by hand first. And of course, there were tears. And of course, it was like, yep, because that was what I didn't want to admit to. I didn't want to show it. I mean, I don't think it was that I didn't want to admit to it, but there was just something self-protective going on that I wasn't able to say it initially. But I ultimately got there, and now I know it's so much better, because it's like, yeah, this is the truth. This is my truth of my experience.
Yeah. I've heard a couple of writing people talk about writing people, like writing coaches and those who advise those people who want to get their story out. Like, there's showing and then there's telling. Yeah. Like, you can tell the story, but sometimes you have to show the emotion. You have to show them, you have to walk them through the sensory aspects of what was going on inside of you and the environment, and like those moments where time kind of stands still.
Yes, exactly.
And you're like, what is happening to me right now? Is this really happening to me? Right? Like, you need to take people into that. And I say, even if you're not going to go with a publisher, people blog, people do exposés, people do articles, people do Facebook posts that could be a story. I've seen amazing things like that. And I've seen not interesting things like that. So we all have this need to like, can someone hear me? Can someone validate? Can someone have eyes on what I went through?
Yes, exactly.
And for me, it's witnessing. It's like, can you serve as a witness for me? And also I'm learning like the art of detachment with that, because some people are going to read my story and think ill of me.
Right.
Straight up.
Sure.
And I can't manage that.
No, exactly.
So this consultant that I worked with, he was like, this is your season as you're gearing up for your book to be released, as you're gearing up while you're in the depths of writing and whatnot, to galvanize yourself against the criticism, to get thick skin.
Yeah.
To recognize that you're not going to, you're going to lose people that street cred with people that genuinely you care about.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that it's a real weeding process to say, this is me. Because some people like the idea of you.
Right. Exactly.
And those are not the people that you want in your space, the people who love what you believe or love the idea of you or they think you represent, as opposed to, no, this is my heart. This is inside my soul. This is me. This is the real me. And I think your stories can help people feel more relational with you. Like, even if they are judging you, they can't argue with like, this is how I felt.
Right. Exactly. That's true. I mean, if you really take a scene where you go into, as you said, the senses of it, it's like, what did I see? Was there smell? Was there touch? What was going on? No one can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away. And then also it allows the reader to be with you in that. So a lot of times writers will think, well, I said I was upset, or I said I was angry. It's like, okay, but that's telling. It's like, but how did that anger look? How did it play out? How did it manifest? That lets us know when you say I was angry, that lets us know what that means for you, because there's all different degrees, right? There's all, there's all different expressions of it as well. So
sure.
Yeah.
So how do you know if it is time? How do you, if somebody, I guess, even if they're even asking the question, is it time to tell my story? They have a story in them.
Sure.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
So how do you know when to take that bridge and go over and actually like put energy into it? Because that's where I'm at now after all this time. I'm ready to throw my heart and energy into my story, not just my research, not just the things I've learned, but my actual experiences. So for me, I had my own like awareness around that, or awakening to that being the time. But what have you found as you've worked with people? Like, what is usually the catalyst where they're like, okay, it's time? Like, and even for yourself, maybe.
It's that. So it's time to write. That we're going back to that place, right? It's time to start writing. So I think it's that internal. There's something, a voice that won't get quiet. I mean, it's there. Like, I need to do this. I need to put this down. I need to express this. So it's like that. There's a drive, a voice. There's a knowing that you got to do it. And I think it's that simple in a sense, and yet that hard, because then of course there's all the other things. There's life gets in the way. And then there's also that those saboteurs and the inner critic that comes in that can shut it down. So if you can't get that voice to turn off that says it's time for me to write, then the action is, how do I make space for it? So,
and that was pretty much what happened to me.
Yeah.
It almost became like, will you leave me alone already?
Right.
And I realized, like, I've got to get out of my own way in many respects and let this just come through.
Right.
Because the old way is, I've got to create this masterpiece, this work of art. And really what I'm seeing is that's not what people want. They want the real, the raw. They want it to lead somewhere, and they want practical, help or advice or what have you, or they want it to tie together. But at the same time, like, they just want to be in your shoes for a little bit. And for me, that's like really vulnerable. It's inviting somebody in to witness what I've been through.
Yes.
So you're saying there's this voice, or maybe it's your soul calling, like, hello, it's time.
Yes.
So how would you know, like, I guess this just answers it too, but like, if it's a desire, if you want it, Because even in saying all this, like it's hard, it's vulnerable, whatever, like I really want to do it. So you're saying it's just a matter of carving space into your schedule or your day to where you actually do it.
Exactly. It is. And also even it can be that you work with somebody. I mean, I work as a coach with people either as from everything, starting with accountability, where we just do a monthly check-in to see how's it going, to people who, writers who want to have feedback on their writing as they're writing, to, every 2 weeks to once a month. I mean, I work with people in all different ways, and I've also heard of, women who will have a friend that they will, do it together. It's like, we're going to be accountability partners to each other. Women tend to do that more than men, not to be stereotypical, but it just seems that that's how it goes. So it's like, it doesn't have to be a writing coach. If that's not something that, somebody can wants to tap into at this point, it's like you can then find somebody else who is writing or who wants to write, and then you become accountability partners to each other. And encourage each other and stay on some path, and also be willing to say to that person, whether it's a coach or a friend, here, I did get stuck these last 2 weeks. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about what that looked like. I mean, I have people that writers that I work with who think that I'm going to be like the school teacher who's going to get really angry at them for not completing their assignment. That's like, no, let's look at what life looked like. And sometimes life really was in the way. I mean, it's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. I work with one woman that all of a sudden this last year, because of COVID, her spouse was at home with her partner was at home, her son was at home. Everybody was trying to work together under the same roof. Everybody, had their schedules, time on the computer and everything. And so it really took a toll on her writing for a while. But she was so persistent about it that she started getting up in the middle of the night and to write, because she was determined to get some of the writing done. So
yeah, I'm finding I have to get up really early in the morning. That's what's happened. That's the reality. But then I'm thinking about it all day, and I'll just write something here and there that comes to me. So having accountability, having structure around like, oh, I'm going to write my story versus like, no, I'm really serious. I'm going to hire someone. I'm going to get a coach, or I'm going to, have a partner, whatever it is, what that looks like. I love that, because for me, I work really well with deadlines. Mm-hmm. And some people don't, but I do, because it's just how I'm oriented. But you're talking about these touchstone experiences, or these, what to do when the saboteur creeps in. Have you ever heard of the book, The War of Art by Stephen?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. So it's one of my favorite books about creating. And he talks a lot about just getting out of your own way and not taking yourself so seriously, like the tortured artist martyr thing, right?
Yes.
Like, so ridiculous. And I can see myself doing it, and I'm like, wait, just chill, Cherie. It's not live or do or die or whatever. But in me, it's I'm going so deep that I'm like, oh, I want this to be right. It's like trying to explain to somebody, I've read a lot of near-death experience books, and they all say that. They're like, trying to explain this experience or what I walk through and putting language to it is a challenge, because I'm just going to lose the sanctity of this. And so I have this thing going in my mind, like, well, if I tell this, it's going to water it down, or it's not going to be as, but to me, I guess it's still mine. So I can still claim it for myself. But how would you help somebody through something like that when they're having that resistance to like something so sacred or something mystical? Or
it's go back to write it down, just get it out, just let it pour out, try to just let it pour out without any censoring, without any, what's the right word for this? I do it. I know how to do it. It's like where you are like looking at what you're doing and you're already judging it. And yet you're in the creation phase. So it's like, no, when you're creating, just let it be created.
Be messy
just let it be messy. Just, and it's a first draft, it's the first draft. So just get it out. And if you're, when I work with people as well, we look at whether that person will be served by getting feedback on their writing or whether that will actually derail them from the creation process. And so some people, it will derail them. So I don't look at their writing. They might want me to be the receptacle of their writing, but I don't even open it up. And I make that promise to them, and I don't touch it.
Wow.
But
you're just there to kind of guide the process so that they can go into the depths they need to. Yeah. And
we talk about just what you were describing. If there's things coming up where all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm losing, it's getting watered down, or I'm losing the significance of this moment. We'll talk through it and see, well, what might they do? How might they handle it? Not about the content per se, but just the process of it. Yeah. Like how can we tap into letting this come out as real and raw as possible, and without letting anything, muddy it up. So we'll do that. And then I have other people that they can't move forward unless they're getting feedback along the way. So it's like we find out what is each author, what do they need? What's going to serve them to get to the end, to the manuscript.
Right.
And then I remind people, I'll remind you, Cherie, is that this, it's a first draft. I mean, you're going to go back through it yourself once you have it all written. And then eventually you're going to have an editor go through it with you, who's going to companion you through the rewriting process. So to bring it out more. And if it's the right person, they're going to help bring even more brilliance to not that from them. They're going to help you bring out the brilliance yourself with, to make it more vivid and just even more accessible for the reader. So it's like, if you can remember that, then you can take yourself off the hook as you're writing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Writing come out.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah, and I find myself having to do state changes, physiological state changes, get up and dance, go out for a walk, get so locked in. And I know that about flow anyway, whether it's writer's flow you're trying to have or any kind of flow. Or receive any kind of inspiration or revelation. It's like, you've got to be moving, and you got to be like, you just can't be stagnant. Your energy cannot be stagnant.
Absolutely.
So I'm learning that about myself. Is like, I will go somewhere for 5 days to write, let's just say. And on day 2, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is not. So then I'll just go do something fun. I'll go, like I went away to write, and I got an Airbnb, which wasn't that far from my house. And I was having writer's block, and I was like, I got this Airbnb. I got away from my house. And I'm like, my daughter texted me, my daughter that's 22, and she's like, I wonder if we could get Les Mis tickets. And I'm like, check. Sure enough, there were two seats in a certain section, whatever. So I did that. And the next day it was just like, I was like, duh, like, I don't know.
It's just shifting the energy. I mean, sometimes for me, it can be as simple as going out to my backyard and being with this tree that I just love. I'm just so connected to this tree in my yard. So that's one way. Or I'll just, sit outside and just let this, soak in the sun, or walk around in the backyard. I also have hula hoops that sometimes I'll take a hula hoop out and just do some hula hooping, because that shakes it up. It's like it just gets the hips shaking and moving, and also it gets me into that playful mindset instead of taking myself so seriously.
Yeah, because shouldn't this be fun? Why are we tortured?
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing that Stephen Pressfield taught me with his book, is like, this is a joyful, like, you want to write, not because it's going to produce a book. You want to write just to write.
That's right. I have
that
I say, allow yourself to be written, and you and your story matter. And that doesn't mean whether it's going to turn into a book or anything. It's just allow yourself to be written. Even if it's something that that's going to be there for for you to read later on in your life, or if it's going to be there for your family, or if it is going to be a book. But it's like, just allow that.
I have certain people that pop into my radar of like sort of avatars of who I'm kind of writing to. And that helps me because I love these people and I want them to understand where I'm coming from. And I also like, so it helps my writer's process is like looking through their eyes. Would they understand this, or do I need to go a little deeper into what this is that I'm trying to say or tell? So anyway, I love the state changes with nature. I love creating movement and flow, having a dance party in my living room or something while I'm blocked up. Okay, well, how can people find you, Donna? And I just think this has been so delightful, and it's been really good for me to just own this creative process and sort of like even bouncing some of these things off of you that we've been talking about. It's been really affirming for me. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for us to stay connected. So we definitely, I want to hear how it's going. So
same with you. Yeah. Well, yours is, what is it? February? You're saying
February. Yep. February, probably Valentine's Day, but yes, February 2020. 2022.
2022. That's right. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember Valentine's Day. I launched my podcast on 2/22 at 2 a.m. for this very reason. I'm not kidding you.
Look at that.
I'm telling you, if you pay attention to things, the universe sends you things in patterns.
Absolutely.
So, yes. Okay. So how, if say somebody has a book in them and they're like, I need guided, I need help. They want to start working with you. How do they find you?
So my website is writingwithdonna.com. So it's very easy to find me.
Yeah.
And then there's in there, it tells about coaching, tells about editing. It also goes through the editing process, goes through it all. It also connects to my publishing site because I am a hybrid indie publisher as well.
Yeah, I see that.
A very micro publisher, but I love it. It's more of my heart work for sure.
Yeah.
And so, I also offer a 1-hour complimentary Zoom or a phone call, and you can right there, my scheduler's on the site. You can go on there. And I used to do 30 minutes and it never was enough. So 30 always turned into an hour. So now I just show up as an hour. It's like, why fight it? So why pretend? So, we got to have that conversation to just kind of find out about each other, and also for whoever I'm talking to find out what it is that they're looking for. And it may be that it's me, or it may be that it's not me. I mean, that there's another direction for them, or maybe it's not time, but we explore.
Just getting that clarity is helpful, and just voicing it.
Absolutely.
And I feel too, like maybe people who feel compelled to write, again, it may not always be to publish. It might be part of their therapeutic process.
Sure.
Absolutely. So like for my mom's been writing during COVID just for us to have her legacy, and she's not going to go get it published, but you know what I mean? Like we all have different intentions for wanting to write and record things. Me definitely like, hey, the more people that buy my book, the better, just because I'm not attached to the financial end of it at all. But the more people that get the message that I can serve, the better. So I'm coming from that standpoint. But at the same time, I know that there are just certain things that I will write only for my children or only for myself.
Right. Exactly. So it's just the idea of writing in whatever capacity. Well, when it comes to a book, even I say to people that you write your book first for yourself, and then you write it for others. Now, if you do it to the exclusion or one or the other, then I don't think it's as impactful. But if you remember that it is for you as well as for your readers, then it can be this beautiful it's this merging that happens as a result of that really makes something that is impactful and something that people are going to remember and pass on to and tell others about. So,
right.
Yeah, it has staying power. Yeah. So
and it could be your legacy too. I mean, legacy writing is a whole other thing, like beautiful. I wish I would have had writings of some of my ancestors to read.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean?
Feel the same way. Exactly.
Like the day in the life of a woman who I'm related to would have been so powerful, and to dive into her own emotions. It wasn't always safe for them to do that.
Not at all. No, everything had to be kept locked tight.
And that's why we are in this era of like, get your story out. People need to learn from you. They need to step in your shoes, look through the lenses that you're looking through for just a moment so that it can help heal parts of them and be validating for their own journey.
Exactly. And I think it's about, those of us who feel this calling to do so, whether it comes from our own soul, wherever we feel it's coming from, whether it's a universal calling, but anybody who feels it, I feel like we're bridge builders, that's what's happening here. We are building bridges, not to deny the past or to eradicate it, actually to help bring understanding from the past forward into knowing that there's going to be a different and better future ahead.
Sure.
So it's like, that's what I think we're being called to do.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Donna. This was lovely.
Thank you.
Isn't it cool to think that just your story, like just you speaking out or writing or sharing in some way your story can help to heal the world? I'm finding it's helping to heal me as I'm writing my story, climbing into the memoir writing process and not editing myself as I go, but just really stating things as they are, how I experienced them at the time I experienced them in present time, and how I'm reflecting back on those experiences now that I hold more wisdom, I guess, and just owning, this is all growth. This is all learning. This is all me. So I want to just encourage you, if you think you have a story in you, to write. And even if it never gets published, it's just so therapeutic to do for yourself. The next episode in a couple weeks will be adding onto this conversation about writing. And, if you do want to get published or if you want to self-publish, just the whole art and process of that sacred storytelling. So that will be forthcoming on our next episode. Have a glorious 2 weeks, because now my episodes are generally released every 2 weeks instead of every week. So have a glorious couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you in October on Women Seeking Wholeness.